And I want to get right into this lesson. This is one of the most important lessons I think you're going to have in your entire time in high school, because people just don't talk about this. At least they don't talk about it maybe with some of the detail that we might go into. But let me get right into it. This is lesson 15. The topic is socialism. And the title of this lesson is The Failures of Socialism, the Theory. And then we're going to look in a couple days at the failures of socialism in history. But first let's talk about the theory of socialism. So there's three things that you need to know, three broad objectives for this week. One is to be able to know the definition of what we call socialism and what we mean by a command economy. Let me just tip this down a little bit for you, okay? And so then there's what we're going to talk about, the incentive problem of socialism, and then I'm just going to give you real quick what we're talking about in terms of what's the calculation problem of socialism. But socialism is what we call a command economy. Now, so far we've been talking about a free market, and a free market is capitalism, all right? It's where people own the factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Those are owned by individuals. However, and that's what we call a free market, that's what we call capitalism. And people barter, they take their goods and their services and they trade back and forth, and they get prices involved, and they find out, you know, through their preferences and choices and all of that. All of these things you have studied, we have studied now a pure market system. But now we're talking about socialism, which is called a command economy. And what we mean by that is, in a command economy, the government owns the factors of production. And the government allocates the factors of production out to people. And they try to do that in a fair way. Some call it very, very much like in a democratic way, a democracy. However, now we live here in the United States, and while we think of a democracy, truly what we really have is a republic. We live in a republic in which we have individual states that have states' rights, and then there are some overarching where the national federal government intervenes and helps out. But socialism is a command economy, and it's where a command economy is where the government owns the factors of production, and they allocate them out. And so that's our definition. In fact, your definition of socialism, let's see here. Let me just go back to your terms here real quick so I don't misspeak it. Socialism is simply, it's another name for a command economy, an institutional arrangement in which the government owns all the major resources and directs labor according to a unified central plan. All right? So that's the definition. So in a planned economy, it's the government who plans everything out. Now, we will not get through this entire lesson on Monday. We'll get through part of it. But I'm going to share a video clip and a greeting from a friend of mine whom I met 2 summers ago at Acton University, which was a conference I went to on free markets. And her name is Lee Her name is Lee. I'm having a senior moment to remember her last name. It'll come to me later. Lee and her husband Ken, Schooland, there we go. And Lee was born in China, and she's probably close to my age, maybe just a couple years younger. And so she grew up in China, where they have communism, and they have a socialistic society, and they have a command economy where the government plans out everything for you. She's going to share tomorrow in our class through YouTube what that was like. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But that's what socialism is. It's a command economy where the government owns the factors of production and allocates them out based upon a centralized plan. All right. Now, the second broad thing, big picture that we're going to be reading about is socialism's incentive program. And basically, now remember, I'm just giving you the big picture. The incentive program of socialism, the incentive problem of socialism is this. When you're in a market economy, where capitalism, where you own the factors of production, where people own it, and you have your own business and nobody's telling you what to do, the incentive is you work hard. What happens when you work hard? You get a lot of resources for it, whether it's money or you're trading things back and forth, and you're getting things based on your work. Nobody else, but based on your work. And then you can do with what you own any way you wish. You can share it with other people, you can keep it, invest, save, but that's what happens in a market economy under capitalism. Under socialism, the incentive problem is this. If the government owns the factors of production, if the government then, what they do is they line up projects for people to do. They plan these projects out for their country of what needs to get done. Maybe they need rice planted over there, or maybe they need road construction over there. And so what they do is people don't own the factors of production, and everybody's going to be treated equally. And so what happens is if you're working, if you're a hard worker, there's no merit for you for your hard work that you give out, all right? What that means is the person who might not be as skilled as you in a particular job, and if you're on the same job, if they're not as skilled as you, guess what? They get paid the same as you, because that's what happens, and everybody's treated the same. It sounds good, but what happens is the incentive problem is there's no incentive to work hard because you're not going to get compensated anymore than whatever the arrangement is. And everybody's going to be compensated the same. So the incentive is, why work hard? I'll put in minimal hours. Okay, if I have to work 40 hours a week, I might even try to get by with 39 and a half. I'm certainly not going to work 40 and a half or 41 because it doesn't benefit me to work more. And so that's the incentive problem of socialism, is there are some people who will always work hard, but there's no incentive to work hard. Actually, it goes the other way. You're actually rewarded for not working hard. And then, of course, the other part of the incentive problem is who's going to pick up the garbage. That's just one of the subtitles in your book. What that means is, who's going to do what? If everybody's the same, the people could get assigned different positions in society, and it doesn't really matter. They look at you at a certain point in time, and they say, oh, you should do this. You should be a farmer, and you should work on construction, and you might work in a lab and doing scientific work or whatever. But, sometimes they misallocate. And what they don't look at is the strength of the individual. Like somebody like Bill Gates, who comes along, who was a nerd and great computer programmer, but some of that genius that he had came along over time and developed. And that's how oftentimes works in our lives, is our skill sets develop as we get older and mature and we grow in wisdom and knowledge. And so that's what learning happens. You learn and you build, you learn and you build. And in a market economy, in a free market economy, believe it or not, your highest productive earning years are when you're in your late 50s to your early 60s. That's when you have, because you have wisdom, you have knowledge, you have experience, and you have the ability in a free market society to earn a lot of money and to do really, really well. But in a planned economy, socialism, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. They don't recognize the strength of the individual. They look at where you're at a certain point in time, and you get assigned work, and guess what? You'll probably do that work for most of your life. Now, we'll read more, but that's the big picture about the calculation problem. And then there is there's another subtitle called One Giant Monopoly. And what that means is, under socialism, where the government plans things out, when the government is in charge of something, our experience, at least our experience from what we see so far, the author and myself included, is that government does very few things really, really well. And if they're the only ones doing one thing, whatever that thing is, there's no incentive for them to make their customers happy and to have quality and to have excellence to bring their customers back, because there's no competition. For example, here in the States, DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, if you go to the Secretary of State's office to get a driver's license, let's say, or you want to register your car, you wait in tremendously long lines. You usually meet somebody who's not real happy on the other side of the counter, and they don't have to be cheery and bubbly, and they don't have to excite you, and they don't have to win your business. There's only one place in town to get your driver's license or to register a vehicle, and that's a Department of Motor Vehicles. All right? So that's a problem when government is involved and they're the only ones doing it, is the quality goes down and the incentive for doing better is very minimal. Okay, that's the incentive problem. Then there's the last thing we're going to talk about is socialism's calculation problem. And what we mean by the calculation problem is this, and that is how do you plan your economy? Where in your country, are you going to have certain things? So in other words, where are we going to have rice? Where are we going to have automobiles built? You know, how do we figure that? How do they figure that out? And then, because here in the States what happens is someone has an idea for a business because people own land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. They own all those resources. You want to start a business, you start your business right where you're at. But what if you were in a planned economy and you wanted to work in agricultural, but they decided in your area they're going to do all manufacturing. We're going to build and make things. You're not going to plant things, and you want to be a farmer. You want, and sorry, where you're at, everything has been planned to be manufacturing, so you're going to have to work in the plant, and you can't be on the farm. Or you may live in a farming community, and you want to work in a mechanized industrial society area, manufacturing, but you can't because the area that you live, they plan, no, you're going to be a farmer. So that's the problem. What they call the calculation problem is they don't know. The government does a very poor job at planning things for their society, and you'll hear my friend Lee Schoolin talk about that very thing. What they were told, what they could do, what they could sell, what they could plant, what they could buy, what they could sell, and what they couldn't. And so that's a calculation problem with socialism because they just don't do it very well, and they really don't know how to apply the resources. Let's see here. So I think those are the big pictures there. So I think you're going to really enjoy these next two lessons on socialism. It's a big deal. I'll just give you a little personal opinion here, personal thought, and that is I grew up hearing my parents talk about socialism, and it was spoken in a very bad way. Now, when I say a bad way, meaning my parents' experience going through a Great Depression, going through World War II, even before World War II, they remember when Russia got taken over and when communism came in and socialism came in. They remember how that happened. And in the States back in the 30s and the 40s when my parents were coming up, they remember that not many people at all looked upon socialism with any favor. And in fact, you didn't even want to say the word. And today we hear some of our young politicians talking a lot about democratic socialism, which is just another way of just another word for socialism, and all the things that government's going to do for you. And remember, government doesn't do anything for you. People do things for you. Government doesn't have any responsibility. People have responsibilities. So keep in mind of that as we look in these lessons. I hope you really enjoy it. I hope you'll engage with me. All right, I hope you really engage because these are going to be some good lessons. Okay, that's the big picture. Watch this video. I hope it helps you, and I'll see you tomorrow. And let's get engaged in class time and talk about this very thing. Okay.